Thank you for joining us. I'm Christine Obnial, the Women in Architecture co-chair, along with Mayuri Joshi. And we also have Rita Carter, who's also on the leadership. And I think everybody else is signing on. So just want to welcome you to the Women in Business panel. It's the second installment. First one was by Mayuri, and we also have an upcoming panel on September 23rd with Anne Britannia, Betsy Dougherty, and Rita Carter as well, and Wendy Rogers from LPA. So please join us on September 23rd for that event. So Jeff, I'll hand it to you. He's our executive director for AIA Orange County. He'll just be going over a couple of protocol things for this particular event.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Christine. Just a little housekeeping. It's information we're required to do at the start of every program by National AIA, so I need to read through this information. The first thing I would say is please stay muted so that the panelists can have an easier conversation and so that you can all enjoy it. That'd be greatly appreciated. So our first one, our provider name is AIA Orange County, and our number is A036. The title of today's program is the AIAOC Women in Architecture Committee Presents Women in Business, Part 2. There's a course number. You will receive 1.5 learning units. And the last slide, I'm going to show you how you're going to do that. And of course, here's today's date. Come on. There we go. Okay, let me move the photos there. Picture a little bit. Credits earned on completion of this course will be reported to AIA CES for AIA members. Certificates of completion for both AI members and non-AI members are available upon request. That means reach out to me or reach out to Marilee if you want one, and we'll take care of that for you. This course is registered through AIA CES for continuing professional education. As such, it does not include content that may be deemed or construed to be an approval or an endorsement by the AIA of any material of construction or any method or manner of handling, using, distributing, or dealing in any material or product. That's a new one. I haven't read that slide before. The course description, this is the one I'm really required to talk about. It's our learning objectives. So there's the opening paragraph. This is what you are going to learn today. Analyze ways to focus growth in strategic areas of business. Assess resources, industry networks to support future growth. Identify challenges to building a sustainable business in the 5 to 10 year phase. Evaluate personnel needs and your leadership style as the business evolves. I'm sure there's many, many more that you're going to learn as well. These were just the 4 that we needed to get approved by National AIA. And finally, so that you can get your 1.5 learning units, Marilee sent out a link to the Google form. It was in the, had the Zoom link with it as well. So there's another link. You need to fill this out. It's only open for 24 hours. It's a requirement of National AIA. Extremely easy. It's got your name. It's got your AI member number, it's asking for that. It's asking which chapter, and I don't know, maybe one other thing, and that's it. It won't even take you a minute to do. So please, though, make sure you fill out that form so that way you can go ahead and get the learning units. So that's it. I will stop share, and Christine, turn it back to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you guys for joining us. We have a great panel for this evening, and part of the reason that we're gathered here today is because I took a course on women's entrepreneurship, and one of the things that I'd realized through this particular course was that the reason women weren't starting businesses was on account of really just not having a know-how of it, right? So the purpose of this particular panel is really to be that forum for those of you that might be considering starting practice, or even just glean the idea of running, functioning within a practice as if you're running your own business, and really just from the care and diligence in sort of helping your practice thrive. And so the women we've brought together in the 5 to 10 years of experience for business practice, and will lend insights into where you go from here once the practice is established. So the Genesis, again, is a forum for women who may be considering their own practice, be it a traditional architectural practice or several other options for consulting practices to meet a need seen in the industry. We hope that you walk away with a bug in your ear, at the very least, that starting your own practice is a possibility. As I mentioned, or maybe didn't mention, I am a project manager at Ware Malcolm, and I'm also an adjunct faculty member at Orange Coast College. And one of the things I do try to teach my students is that there are several ways you can apply an architectural degree, and really just several ways you can be part of this industry. And so at the very least, hope that you walk away with several best practices on how to be your own office, as my previous boss told me. So with that, I would like to introduce our panelists. So first on my screen, Yolanda, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. My name is Yolanda Sepulveda, and I am with Spectacle Design. And Christine, do you just want us to go over just a quick overview of the business approach?
Yeah, well, I mean, just go over kind of what you do, what you sort of saw, what you saw in the industry as sort of a need that you met with the business that you've started.
Okay, sounds good. Background is in urban design and architecture, and that's actually where I started my career. And then, as some of you may remember, there was this little recession thing that happened back in 2008 that may have displaced some of you. I was one of those people. And when I re-entered in, learned a whole different side of real estate from a design perspective of branding, visioning, wayfinding, things of that sort, and got recruited by a company to do that. And then fast forward to several people had approached me and said, hey, why don't we go start our own thing? And we see what you do with the clients and your understanding of urban design and built form and development process. And we think that we could have something. So after many, many years of thinking that the last thing I ever wanted to do was own a company, here I am. And so it was by a happy accident, which is kind of a longer story, but to make it short in terms of what it is it was a passion for the industry and what it is that we get to do in creating communities and places for people, mostly from the user side of things. It's no accident that I went towards urban design over architecture, and to me it's because the people factor just made sense to me. And I do think that when looking at my reasons and motivations for deciding to join a group of people to start a business, it was about understanding a passion that I had and the idea of service, because we're all in the service industry. And I think if you can combine those two things, for me, that was definitely core and elemental to what motivated me to take that big, scary leap. So that's all.
How about you, June?
Hi, so thank you for having me here. And my name is June. I'm the architect and founder of DH2 Architects, and we started in 2013. It's actually been 8 years so far. So when you have a question about how we started our own business and how you start, it just have to go back to like 8 years ago, how I started. And I think a lot of people in this the same today seminar are thinking a lot, like especially women or the members. I think the moment that I was really thinking of how I started, it's just that I really didn't have a detailed plan when I quit the company. I've been like 12 years experience from Minnesota and Hawaii and California. I never really stopped and never really kind of have a long vacation in my life. It's just working and for 12 years. And it just exhausts, like what Yolanda mentioned, and you have a recession time, and to survive recession time, we work so hard. So it's about 2012, I think 2012. And my limit was really high, and I couldn't really, maybe I needed some fresh energy or to go next my career. So I think I decided to quit the company. I needed some vacation or maybe healing moment and thinking about something else later. So I think it's that I thought about that time how I started. I think it's maybe I just quit the job first without any plan and then think about later kind of that experience. And then I think it's and then I went to my families and my mom's and we're thinking about it. I had a really great 2 months long vacation, and then my mind is really clear. And then I think I'd be really honest about what I'm doing good and what I'm not doing good. And luckily at that time, my previous boss, had some design project. He needed some consulting, like design consulting job. So I could work with him a little bit. At the same time, I thought is I always feel like I'm weak over some construction industry. I need some construction experience. So I did some work for the design build company, really low fee, and I worked the city permit stuff and construction job site in little everything. And then after 6 months, I feel really confident about, oh, I can build my house now, that kind of feeling. So that's how I started my own business. I think maybe I'm ready for the experience, not about financially much. I think I just wear like so. I mean, our industry is pretty good because if you have some talent or you have experience, you can kind of start from nothing. That's what I started. So I think we're doing mostly, since I had that experience from my previous experience company or my small like design build companies and all international design companies, I do now mostly high-end custom homes and then maybe high-end luxury restaurant project. So it's more detail oriented and I can design whatever I kind of want to kind of in that, session I'm trying to go for. So that's how I am here. Thank you.
How about you, Natasha?
So my story is definitely a little bit different. I was 21 and I started at an engineering and testing firm as a dispatcher. I would pick up the phone and send out inspectors to the job site. I was hungry in the industry, but I didn't know where I fit or where I belonged. So I was just like, keep trying and see what doors open. I was working 2 jobs. I had to work at a bar at night to make ends meet to pay my rent. And DSA had all these projects not certified. And I became obsessed with the problem. And I'm like, what do I got to do to become good at this? Read plans, learn code, and try to be the best project manager I can be. So I started it as a side business at the engineering firm. And then there came a road where the owners are like, hey, we see what you're doing on the side. We see you working for us. You have to make a decision. You go on your own or you stay. There were no women in leadership at the time. The company is completely different now. It's actually owned by a woman. She bought it. And I said, you know what? I'm 27 years old. I have nothing to lose. And what's the worst that could happen to me? I come back working for you. And he really cared about me and said, I'm not saying this to be mean. I'm saying this to warn you. You're a woman who's not educated. You don't have a degree in architecture, engineering. You're in a man's world. You're young and you still need some grooming to do. And I looked at him and I said, it's okay. I'm going to have to learn. I can do this. And so I jumped by myself at 26, 27. I started landing my contracts and then I started hiring employees. And here I am at 36 years old with 7 employees, helped over 50 school districts in the state of California. I share that story because so many of us hold ourselves back thinking, I have to be this, I have to be that. All I have to say is there's a woman by the name of Alex Parslow, who was the principal at PBK WLC. And she was my inspiration to be like, you can start a business with whatever you have. It's just all here and here. So that's how I started PSS.
Such a great story. To piggyback on that, the next round of questions is really circled around finding your fingerprint. So with that, Yolanda, when we were doing sort of this pre-panel prep, you were talking about this sort of perspective shift. Do you want to elaborate on kind of what you were seeing and how things have shaped maybe your trajectory, and then specifically what you determined was the right projects to pursue now moving forward?
Sure, and I want to build off of what Natasha said as well, because I do think that's part of the trajectory piece. I think that for me, not being a traditional architect, I think that the company that I was at, that was a lot of the inspiration, honestly, just being unhappy there, and a lot of other people being unhappy saying, let's leave and go do this thing. I'm sure that anybody who's worked at an architecture firm early on has experienced the pains of feeling inadequate about design, or it's a very strenuous, competitive industry to be in, development as well. And I think that to Natasha's point is that perspective shift is, and I don't know if this happens the same way for men, but I think for women, there's always somebody to step up and tell you why you're not qualified enough to do something or what you need to do more of. there's rarely ever the people who, when you say you're going to do some big, audacious, crazy thing like start a business and lead a practice and do those types of things, that you don't get some critics that, I mean, and you feel it even if it's not said. So I think for me, it was, you know, being in urban design and the time that I entered the industry in very early, right at the start of the 2000s, that was something is that, you know, if you're an urban designer or an architecture firm, you know, you're still not an architect. And then when I moved on, I was working with a different firm in design. They were mostly graphic designers, and they were like, but you're not a graphic designer. So there's always somebody saying like, you're not this. So to me, that perspective shift was kind of looking at what can you do that's undeniably you, that you're passionate about and you're good at. And oftentimes it's the people questioning your qualifications that I think for a lot of us, especially women, because we're resourceful, you tend to be a little bit more scrappy and you tend to hustle a little harder to figure it out, because you just have to show up a little bit stronger and more prepared. And I just think by nature too, we're planners, we're resourceful, we're going to figure out a way to do it. And so to me, that was the perspective shift was, you know, it did take other people convincing me to leave and start. And I don't know that I would have been brave enough initially, quite honestly, to do it on my own. They're both, you know, gone. The initial people that convinced me to leave and start this are no longer, you know, with me as partners anymore, because they got scared early on. And so I think that perspective shift of realizing every single person on this call and anybody really working, you have a specific skill that you love doing, that you're really great at. And the fact that a thought even crosses your mind of should I start my own business is kind of a crazy thought, but it shows that there's some tenacity beyond just being okay with showing up for work and doing the job and clocking in and clocking out. So I think for me, that was kind of it, is just realizing that there's always going to be more people saying like, you're not ready because you don't know X, Y, Z, or why would you think blah, blah, blah. But I think it's just kind of harnessing what makes you you and being, you know, undeniable at what it is that you do, and realizing, again, that whole passion and service piece, figuring out what that niche is and how you can turn that into a service offering is key. And it does change, it evolves. I think for me, it was understanding, you know, the development side because of urban planning, the city aspect of things, but then also just being insatiably curious about the places that we were creating, where they were located, people, culture. Having that type of perspective as more of a curious observer is what really fueled our design solutions now. And I didn't say this before, but what we do is we do branding and visioning and placekeeping for real estate projects. So.
Very cool. June, is there, I guess, in what ways did you specify who and how you worked with potential clients?
I just want to a little bit touch with maybe the COVID little bit related, because we discussed a little bit before, and then that's kind of maybe not only this year, maybe it's gonna be another 3-4 years from now on, kind of affects a little bit of the pandemic time. So I mean, we're like more like a residential custom home, and it's a little bit rich, you know, clients. And then I do like also high-end restaurant, which is a really big impact in this pandemic time. So, but still we had like a two little bit different sectors. So last year, for example, it was a pandemic happened, we're really like struggling, and you know, we kind of really don't know where to go, and it was a really those uncertain time, you know, past like last March through like June. So it's 3-4 months. It was a little bit shaking, but then I think July and August, the government like all those cash flow or some those $1 billion to the like a lot of support from government. So it's a lot of people. It was really interesting how this things shift. Like a lot of people want to build a house or renovate it, all that, because they have extra cash. So it was for 1 or 2 months, and we have so many projects last year, and suddenly because they want to do it, you know. But then especially the restaurant client that we had was all like we stopped a couple of projects, was ongoing, and they don't have money, and then they shut down. So it was a little interesting experience that I had. And then I realized that like since we have 8 years, so far our company history, if we think about another 5 years, 10 years, we think about really our project diversity or what kind of client we have to approach. And then we never really work a lot for the government job or like what Natasha mentioned about something like SBA or women's, owners, and you can approach a lot of different sectors. So before we didn't really think about that, but I had to study and I had to more more proactive for those industry too. So I think we kind of changed it different, like a really kind of a vibe. I mean, as company, we go for more. We actually finished 2-3 government projects, the bid like recently, and we spend some time and money and actually for the long-term goal is another 5 years. So that's our kind of the making bigger or diverse portfolio. But I think the public sector is a big, things that we didn't think is, much in last 5 years. So that's our kind of a direction we might go. So yeah, and also clients, it has to be really like you cannot depend on just one client sector at this, in this condition. Yeah.
That's actually a good question. Natasha, I have a question for you. In terms of the next 5 to 10 years, like how are you seeing your practice evolve or what you're offering? Because I know you're in the educational or the institutional sector right now. Like how are you looking 5, 10 years about growing, your practice?
Absolutely. So that's the thing about business is sometimes how you start it, it's not how it's going to end. You are maybe starting it and you're a blockbuster and Netflix comes out and your business will go out if you do not evolve. Prime example, I started this business consulting, which we technically do a lot of things of architecture, but someone else stamps all of our stuff. There was all the non-certified jobs. There's 26,000. Now there's down to 8. Well, guess what? My business in 5 years will be blockbuster if I do not evolve or change. So I had to go to the drawing board, and you always have to, I feel, ask your clients, ask the industry, what is the need right now, or what is the need going to be? You go to the drawing board, you draw it out. Last but not least, where's the money at? If you have an idea, but no one has money to spend, you're not going to be in business. I chose K-12 higher education because guess what? There's always local bonds. There's always state bonds. Children will never stop being born and people will never stop going to college. So facilities and people will always vote. But besides that is you have to stay true to your purpose. Passion will come and go. Your passion will change. But if you find your purpose in your passion, then you know exactly what you need to do. So I will always have half of my business in K-12 higher ed because I love the kids. Like I truly do. You build a ball wall, they think you're Oprah. You build a new classroom, they're like, what is this? So in that passion of their joy, I found my purpose on how I made an impact. And you have to pull that into your business or else it will not keep evolving. You have to always evolve to the next step every 5 years and it changes. And if you look at the ones that have stayed in business, you'll see where they started and where they're at today, completely different.
It's true. It's true. To that point, Yolanda, I know you had a really interesting story about when you were kind of growing and then, needing to pivot. Can you tell a little bit about that pivot story, about where you thought it was going when you started versus where it ended up?
Sure, there was a bunch of stories. So I'm hoping I'm going to hit the one that you're talking about specifically. So if I go off in a different direction, by all means, help me course correct on that. I think initially starting off, my thought was that I needed to have partners, and am I going down the right path for you, Christine? Okay, and thinking that my initial thought was never that I wanted to own my own company, and for the sake of glory or ego or anything like that. I just knew that I really loved real estate development. I loved creating things. I loved all the different things that everybody loves about, whether it's real residential, hospitality, retail, we do the whole gamut. And so to me, there was a different understanding that I had of it, and I knew how to find that skill and what the problem was that we were solving, which, to Natasha's point, she had mentioned leveraging a purpose, and that's where your business model goes. Ours is built completely on the fact that understanding what developers' pain points are and helping them navigate it to make it easy to engage with creative consultants so that the end deliverable is delivering on the promise and the vision of what this place is going to be. We involved a lot of public sector as well. So in my head, I kept thinking, for the sake of, legitimacy, and because you do hear, again, whether it's your own chatter in your head or you hear the naysayers of, but you're not this and you're not that. In my head, I kept thinking, you need partners, and that didn't end up working out. I think that the people that I started with were terrified when we got started of all the different things that started coming through, from, forming a corporation to, how it is that you represent yourself, so that you're not leveraging work that you previously did. I think that the big question in everybody's head when they go to leave to start their own thing is, is my previous employer going to get mad, and are they going to come after me? And I will say to everybody on the phone, if that's your concern, nobody is an indentured servant. This is all legal language that we learned. I know there's an attorney on the phone too as I was going through the list, and I will say, find an attorney, make them your friend, hire them. They are invaluable, because I think when it comes to feeling safe, those are all things that I learned early on. But it's scary. These are all scary things to talk about. So realizing after making a few mistakes, and, having a tagline that, another company said, they thought was too close to theirs, all those things, the people that were actually going to stay in the game were my board members and not necessarily the partners. And so that was one of the things that, in terms, for me, was a very hard lesson, because when you had people convince you to leave a company and a job and all the wonderful things that come with having, reporting into a company, and then finding out, they don't have the ability to deliver and go in for the long haul with you, that's okay. I think I just recently had a counseling session with one of my board members who said, the best thing a person can do for you is, when you're starting a company, is as a partner, is leave when they're not ready. Because otherwise, trying to move through something and all the challenges that we all face as business owners on a day-to-day basis, all the questions that we have and all the challenges, that's really something that you want to have them solve for you, rather than you having to try to navigate out of it. So to me, that was a big change. But again, for me, the big lesson that came out of that and the opportunity was understand corporate functions, understand, what your fiduciary responsibilities are, make sure that you have access to, a good quality attorney. And for me, again, a board. So my board always tells me, stop worrying about partners. We technically are the people that are your support for those big, hard questions. And they are some of the smartest people I know. Finding a board that is a group of people that are better, smarter, faster at all the things that you're not good at, is really kind of the key gift that came out of that entire lesson.
So really quickly, for all of the panelists, do you guys want to elaborate on any of the challenges that were encountered as you sort of scaled up?
I think I have a quick comments for this. Recently, I had a 2-3 government job, for proposals, and then I always, notice there are something I'm weak for certain area. I mean, I'm really strong in certain area for this public project actual need, but some of parts I'm not strong enough. So that case, I really needed someone in my team is as partnership to get the scale up or to get a little bit next level. So I think it's still it's hard to be work with a partnership or for this kind of small company setting. But I think still I have to we have to somehow we have to work it out. That's I kind of realized recently. And I don't know exactly how, but I think you need to know more talented people that who's actually the same, but it's a different sector that you think he can do or she can do better than me for that part. So we can be actually stronger team put together one big like a project to make it a company the next care of. So that's a kind of my challenging part right now. How I'm gonna do like it said about like a so law. I mean the some documents and the legal issues and all that. But I think that at the bottom line is trust, or that this is someone is for a long time, or already this person is better with so kind of a trustful relationship. That's maybe a good way to start. So I think this is networking and knowing your industry people, that I think you keep doing that is actually helping for the maybe next year.
Yes, and to elaborate a little bit on the problem part, you will always have problems in your business. If there isn't problems, you're going to be like, what am I doing wrong? Because there's usually problems I'm always solving. So here's what I just want to talk about problems real quick, because again, you're going to have to get used to them. You're going to have to get into the boxing ring with the problem, get a black eye or two, get back up and learn from it. So with problems, there's stories we always tell ourselves. I can't find good people. How am I going to get funding? I don't know this legal stuff. I don't know how to get work. With that story that you tell yourself, 90% of the time, it is false. It is false on what you're believing. So you have to ask yourself, what is the story I'm telling myself? How do I get myself to get this solved? And it goes back to what Yolanda said. You have to have your team of resources. I do not know everything, and that is okay. But if I have a legal question, I have the best attorney. I pick her brains. If I have a question about calculations for structural engineering, I got my favorite engineer with MHP, Dan Fox. If I have any questions on architecture, I have that person. So have your team of people of knowing where to go to, and always figure out what's the question I need to ask myself to get the result I need to move the needle. Oh, that's this person, go to them. So it really is a game, but if you don't attack the game right, you're going to stay in here and you're not going to move anywhere. And just get used to the problems, because they're never going to stop.
Christine, I'd like to add on to Natasha's comment. Those stories just literally came out of this weekend conversation that I had with a board member. Is he said to me, there is zero return. He said, anytime that any of that thought ever comes out, and again, like Natasha's point is, I don't know many people who, even mentors of mine, who don't have that. I think you get better and more nimble at kind of squashing it or turning down the volume on it. But it's just, I mean, we're risk averse people, and that's just part of it. But he said to me, anytime that those thoughts cross your mind, I need you to remember that there's zero return on investment on any of those thoughts. You get nothing back from it. It's a waste of time. It's okay to like be mindful of risk, but at the same time, like, you need to move past it and you just need to find a solution. And I think that's the best thing ever, because it's true. I mean, it's such a simple way to put it, but I think I needed to hear that simplification of it just to kind of let it go and move on.
So I think the three of you all touched on a really good point about the need for partnerships. So were there any sort of alignments that you did find helpful to give you exposure to the expertise? And it could be kind of twofold. It could be the expertise you need to run the business, and then, kind of where you're at and then where you want to go, right? So I guess, what were those partnerships or alignments for you? And I'll open that up to all the panel.
I'll start real quick just with one that I think is useful, is to, like Natasha had said, we keep talking about this concept of know what you don't know. I think it's equally, if not more important, to know what you don't know, so that you can identify those resources. And a lot of times the reason that you have those resources is because of you and the relationships that you have, and relationships take time. Again, there's no quick and easy way to get them, but I think showing up and being committed to your craft, stay engaged, whether it's AIA, for me, Urban Land Institute, a lot of what I do is very multidimensional and multidisciplinary. So finding an organization or a thing that allows you to kind of test ideas and concepts as you're building relationships, so that you're demonstrating a lot of who you are and what your capacity is to get things done. Professional organizations are a great way to do that. Urban Land Institute just happens to be one that's multidisciplinary. So rather than being in a sea of where there's one of many other people that are at the same practice as you, I think finding people that are involved in the entire practice of real estate and having conversations and building relationships with them without the intent of it being transactional and always trying to get something. I think a lot of times the most genuine relationships come from people just being invested in who you are as a person, because you're willing to kind of share and give in a conversation that's really just talking about the thing that you love. In this case, it's real estate development. So that would be my one.
In regards to partnerships, there's two kind, like Yolanda said. Sometimes we tell a story in our head that I need a partner to start a business. No, you do not. Let me tell you why. Partnerships are like a marriage. Before you pick a partner, you should literally go to a business psychologist and see, do we blend together? Do we have different strengths and weaknesses? I'm going to be with this person more than my partner at home. And I've seen a lot of partnerships go south. So when I was at the firm, Corey, I saw how the partners got along, and it was like watching divorced parents. You're like, nope, not going to happen. I'm not doing a partnership, but you do need people to help you. So I'd have to say, if you're not going to have the right partnership and you're unsure about it, don't do it. But you need community. So you need to be part of organizations that are going to help your business and help yourself. So for PSS, I'm part of CASH, CCFC, CSBA, CASBO, because that's my industry. That's my community to get work and resources and network and architects. But on the business side, so I don't get stuck in here and I'm trying to grow, I'm part of other organizations like WPO and things of that nature. So yes, like Yolanda said, be careful with partnerships, because you want to make sure it's with the right person. And if not, you can do it on your own, but find a community if you're going to do it alone, because it's hard. It is.
That's a really good
Just
point.
real quick, I did go to a business counselor, so I know everything that you're saying.
I have a business counselor. They're like business therapist. I talk to her once a week. Yeah.
They exist.
You need one.
I didn't know they existed, but they existed, and it was well worth the investment. Yeah.
Yep.
June, did you have anything to add to that? You're on mute.
I mean, both of you guys are really, touch all that I was thinking all the times. And I think it's a partnership is really challenging, but I think I need, to get another 5 to 10 years, like she said, and I need some build up my weak area that to make it, bigger. So I need that strength that someone who has a better than me that has, so that way I think we can just win-win game. So it doesn't need to be actually to ownership or something. I can be that he's a project partner as a supporter, and then he can be my, supporter. So I'm just go for more that way, I think, right now in current. Yeah.
That's good. And because we're in kind of a unique job market, right? Everybody's scrambling for personnel. There's just a shortage across the board. And so, Natasha, do you want to touch on how you've kind of grown your team, like how you're drawing people in, kind of what you're leveraging?
Yes. When I started early on, again, the story I told myself was I could not afford great people. So I hired cheap. When you get cheap, it is not good. It took me years to change that narrative and say, okay, I need to hire people with 80% of the skill set, architecture background, engineering background, CM background. But then the other struggle comes is, how do you convince them to come to a small business? And to come to a small business, especially in California, our industry, you have to have competitive wages. You have to have benefits like 401k, profit sharing. But besides that, how I was able to convince them before we did that was culture. I started focusing on culture and leadership and say, okay, I can't offer these things now, but as we grow, how can I show them that I'm going to offer this? And we did little by little. And then they started to stay. And besides that, they also wanted to grow at PSS because I was investing in them to grow with this company and become leaders too. So I have to say it is sort of like convincing people to start with your small business. But if you show them as a leader of what they're being a part of to build, and they're intrapreneurs, it's a beautiful thing of what everyone can build together and who will jump on board. Like, you know what? I'm going to take that risk with you. I want to see where we can be in a year from now, but you have to live up to your word and you have to give back to them. It has to be a two-way street. You can't be cheap, can't hoard onto funds, and it has to be an incentive for them to really be a part of your company. It does.
Yolanda or June, do you have anything to chime in on that?
Go ahead, June. I saw you nod your head.
Yeah, I mean, for small business, and my specialist for high-end design, custom home is a lot of detail involved, and it's just the quality is the key to selling point to client. How can I find the good people with the cheap? So you have to have a give and take in some way. Otherwise no one work for you. So, but that interesting, there are some talented people, they're actually looking for long term their goal. I mean, it's not about money. So I think, but you have to convince them what you can give to them. So I told them, I don't like, Natasha mentioned about architecture degree, whatever thing. I got a master degree or that I have a high, education, but in actually when you work in the company, you have team members and you have all a high degree. Sometimes it's really good, but it's not necessary for a certain case. You need a really work ethic. Like, you need to have like a good personality. It's a work is really stressful, design and qualities and all that. So I think I have two people working from the starting, and the one person is not architecture degree, and she has really talented, like a graphic design, major. And I told her, I'm like your styles, and but if you don't mind, I give really small pay, but I can give you, maybe if you work with me 2 years, like this is salary, I can give you your your actual work experience up to that after college degree, like a architecture college degree level, or even more. So I have to really convince, I have to really teach them like how to do even AutoCAD, how to do even teach like 3Ds and all that. But I have to spend my time with that. So, I mean, it's a lot of energy, effort from my side, but then I think it's a good way I can train them as what I really want, So I have a kind of two consultant. It's a high expensive and contract. So I got the estimate. Okay, here's this design and give me this. But they're really annoying sometimes. I want to this level, but they're professional, so they get this. Okay, here's my product. This is my invoice. I needed this, but I have to keep paying. But then I cannot really control that because that's not my people. So, but now I train my team what I want. I can just let them just run. And then now it's after 5 years, we're kind of same people at this point. And I don't really need to work like before 5 years ago. So but it's being my investment. In no investment, no gaining. So that's one strategy. If you really think someone good at teaching or how to communicate, then maybe that's one approach you can think about, like some like a little bit low budget, then you can just start your own business with the people. That's one my kind of sharing experience. But now I think before I just end my speaking about this, and I actually so before I starting my business, there are some chart. It says, as an employer, you really need to treat your team member really well to make your client to come to you. So it's not like your client come to you just naturally. Your actually team effort make your client to come. So I think your team member is really important, and you have to treat really well. That's my kind of a business philosophy. It can be all different, but that's my little bit my personality related to. So that's my approach. If someone maybe can take a little bit from this session, that'll be helpful. I think helpful.
June, you talked about a really good And this is a really good segue actually into the next section. So this next section is meant to parallel, all of sort of the practical things that we've discussed at this point. And now we're getting into like the really authentic emotional process as you're kind of in this stage. And so, June, you talked about ideas you went in to starting this business with and how you wanted it to function. So I'll open it up to all of the panelists. Was there ideas that you came in with, and how did those, on how you wanted the practice to function, and then did those, or what caused those ideas to evolve? And I'm sure COVID will come up several times in this conversation, but I'll open it to you guys. Where did you think, or how did you think the practice was going to run, and how does it now run based on several different factors that you might have experienced?
I think I can start first because I did the other questions. I think it's really challenging. I don't even know 2 years later, I'm keeping my business, to be honest with you. It's like we don't know, but then Natasha mentioned that we know how money goes. Now the government has money, and you know which direction money goes, you can somehow survive, So then you have to train your employee as what I'm thinking too. Like you cannot just force them, oh, this is a government project you should do. From yesterday you do like a custom home, and next day you do this. So it's really it's like it doesn't make sense. So you have to be really gradually educate your team member. You have to be diversity or flexible. Like then you have like 8 hours and 10 hours. I always give them not working too much in one project so hard. Like maybe you do 4 hours and something, like you do some design work, and another 2-3 hours for something research for the government job or some bid proposals and something, because if you do the same one, like especially research or like some looking for some job at 8 hours and 10 hours, it's exhaust, you don't want to have any motivation. So you kind of have to just a little bit freeware, and I don't really do micromanaging these days. And I think it's this COVID pandemic time is really dragging, and you working at home, and people like you need some entertainment and a little bit give us some presence, some environment. You need to go out. Those whole things makes a little bit people want to work more, and then you want to more like work as like some with the present vibe. So that's what I'm trying to do, more like keeping some entertainment, but I think keeping your idea, company mission and company goal next 3 years. I'm just trying to give some, encourage them. You are in part of that. My goal is, after, in the next 3 to 5 years. So let's do it together. That kind of, some slogan. I think that's what I do mostly these days, and I think that's my goal, and maybe keep kind of moving that way. I think. Yeah.
Natasha or Yolanda, did you have anything to add to that?
Yolanda, do you want to add anything?
I saw you unmute, so you go for it.
Okay, so I think the question of what you said, is you said that where your business is at and transitioning with COVID and everything. Is that what you had asked?
Yeah, it's like, I'm sure you went in with, okay, I think it's going to function this way. And then based on several different, pivots along the way or course corrections that you're like, and now it needs to function this way. Like what's that sort of transition like?
I think all of us for the past 2 years have really asked ourselves, how do we work with COVID? And here's what I've learned as a leader. You have to get your team to trust you. It's like you're a Navy SEAL team, you're going in the forest, and you are trusting your leader to get you out to the other side safely. So when COVID hit with my team, I saw fear on their face, fear of what's going to happen to our jobs, what's going to happen to our company, how are we going to stay united, how are we going to work, are we going to go back to the office, are we going to get sick? And I had to step up to the plate and say, okay, I need to reduce their fears, reduce their anxiety, show them this is going to happen, and get them through the forest to the other side. Well, we got to the other side, but how did we do that? Weekly communication, daily check-ins. A little bit of what June said is when you restructure your business, you can't go one day, we're going to do schools, and the next way, we're going to do highways. You're like, whoa, where are you going? So you have to have these meetings with them and keep them on board. There's nothing worse when a business owner says, oh, today this is your job and that's your job. You just lost trust in the employee. You didn't get their buy-in. You didn't ask them if they wanted to do that. And I know everyone's like, you're the business owner, what you says goes. No, you're the business owner. It's your job to be compassionate, have empathy, and really show this team of what's leading on. And it's funny you mentioned that, because we have an org chart that probably changes every quarter. It is like a football game. And as we grow, we keep plugging new bodies in, but it's a beautiful thing, because we're like, all right, here's next quarter's play. Who are we hiring next to do this job? And everyone is excited and on the same page about the game plan. When owners and business owners separate themselves from the team and they don't share their vision or what's going on, you lose trust, you lose people, there goes your company, because the company is from the people that work for you. So that's what COVID taught me of the business and refunctioning, but it also made me really step up. Like, I had to step my game up as a leader and a business owner, 100% and more. Yeah.
I'd like to piggyback onto that. Rita S in the chat just said something about clear communication. Somebody once said to me that clarity is kindness. And I think that if you're leading, I think that can't be reiterated enough, especially if you're feeling responsible and you're the champion and you're looking out for keeping people safe and secure in their jobs. And for us, you know, in the creative industry, that was actually one of the main motivations in being willing to jump and to start this endeavor of a new company. Was I saw that oftentimes in creative industries that are competitive in real estate and architecture and things of that sort, oftentimes it's considered culturally acceptable to belittle and to undermine and demean, and for there to be like a hierarchy structure that isn't necessarily nurturing of safety in terms of allowing people to kind of, and their creativity to flourish. But I think that as a leader, the best thing to do, again, is just to provide clear direction and to share that vision piece. That ends up being something that's really important. The other piece that I wanted to segue in that I think hasn't been mentioned before, that I would be remiss not to say, is in addition to COVID and what the past year and a half has been, is the now, and it's not brand new, but it's something that we're allowed to talk about now, which is DEI. And based on what's happened in the world with racial justice and everything that horrifically has happened over the past year and a half, something big that I think is important to real estate, I don't think a lot of people realized or ever talked about, the fact that the people that have been predominantly owners and CEOs of companies, the C-suite of executives is so far from the people that we're now creating communities for and the diversity that exists across the country. And so now being able to shine a spotlight on that, not due to great circumstances, the things that are critical in terms of accepting and understand diversity for the people that we're creating for, but now making a point to have talent and people that understand that demographic as well. I was heading up a ULI panel once, and this was, I think, 4 years ago, and it was a strategic planning session. So we had a room of 100 leaders in ULI, and we had to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the chair at that time was having me kick it off, and I told him, I don't feel comfortable doing this as a woman who's Native American and Mexican. I feel like this entire room of mostly older white men are going to assume the reason I'm saying this is because of who I am. And he said, well, I will piggyback on and say that just if we look at the dollars and cents of doing good business, if your company doesn't look like the demographic and the population by which you're designing for, it's bad business. And that said, it would behoove us all not to make an effort to try and hire, recruit, understand, do better. I mean, there's so many different things that are now new to some people. The conversations have to happen. I know that Urban Land Institute struggled with this conversation. Many other organizations are, many big private companies are also struggling with it. But I think the fact that we're even just able to talk about it now and it doesn't feel like you're doing it because you're quote unquote complaining as an ethnic person or a woman, is key. And I think, to me, the opportunity that's come out of this is something we need to pay attention to. A lot of systemic racism is based on real estate and real estate development and land use. And so I think that we all have a really cool opportunity to impact that, again, whether it's, residential, hospitality, school and education. There's so many different ways that we can impact it. But I think identifying talent, looking for people, is something that I've started pivoting now as well, is just to make sure that we're allowing representation and diversity in our design solutions. So
that's a good point. One conversation actually I was having recently with another woman in the industry is how much COVID has changed our ability to bring our whole self to work. Now it's not just I'm the employee, right? And that's it. Like, there's several other facets that are now touched on. And I'm hoping that that's part of that transition to the diversity. It's understanding, at a deeper level, what we all bring to the table and how that can augment, how we offer our services, and definitely serve our clients exactly like we always desired to. So on that note, and I know part of the DEI conversation also within several circles that I've been in is the topic of mental health. What ways do you protect your own, and what ways do you sort of protect your employees' mental health, as we are kind of in no man's land on how to operate a business?
So
sorry, that was a loaded question.
I was like, okay, I know. I was like, wait, what part of it first? So are you asking the part of mental health for the team?
Let's start with mental health with you first, because I think that it's kind of like you put your own oxygen mask on before you can give it to, help somebody else put their stuff on.
No, absolutely. I'm going to be very transparent and real, 100%, because when you sugarcoat things, you don't help people. When I took my jump, I worked with about 40 to 50 people in an office. I went to a desk by myself, and I'm an extrovert. I get energy off collaborating, working with people. I got depressed. I went to therapy, and I questioned myself, did I make the right decision? But I knew in my gut and intuition, that's what I was supposed to be doing. And I was starting to get panic attacks. I had to get out of van for 3 months because I would be driving and I'd have to pull over and I could not breathe. And it was because I had 8 years of staying at the same company, and I left my home and I left everything I changed, and I did not know how to cope. And so what I learned by going to therapy was, it's okay, change is happening. And when it happens, when you get triggered, how do you cope? Because in business, you're constantly going to get triggered by all the change and problems. But when those problems are happening, are you going to cope in a good way or bad way? Are you going to eat and gain weight? Are you going to go to the bar and drink? Are you going to go shopping? What are you going to numb yourself out? What are you going to do? You have to figure out, how am I going to, in the right way, mentally take care of myself? That, because when you walk in your office, your team can sense what mental state you're in. I'm sure everyone's seen their boss upset, the energy they bring in. As Oprah said, you are the energy you bring into the room. People can feel that very easily. So my coping method with business and change now is I go to therapy. I have my business coach. I talk to other business women owners. I journal, I work out, I go to boxing, Muay Thai. And the one that I still battle right now, that is my coping method, that's not the healthiest, is eating, because you can find anyone to eat with you, but it's not good when you eat to a point where it's for comfort and stress, not for nourishing your body. So that is the demon I battle right now. But these are my coping methods that I hope, eventually help with that. So that is 100% honesty right there.
That's good. That's good. How about you, Yolanda?
I think for me, and I'm sure, again, just the industry of architecture, and I'm sure a lot of the women that are on this call, is that just enrolling into the major of and taking that on as a study, and then getting into something, professional with that degree, is we tend to be very self-critical, high performing, high drive. And the whole, you know, science of architecture, you know, it's left brain, right brain. There's all this duality that's going on with it. And so for me, I get really in my head as well. And, you know, to Natasha's point is that's something that I think I'm working on doing better is I'm not necessarily the best at asking for help. The best thing that's been good for me is that wanting a team that was able to understand that there was equity in being able to ask questions and to contribute and things of that sort is that making yourself approachable while still having boundaries, them being able to say to me, like, you know, while you're talking, there's a lot in your head. Can we put it down, you know, on paper? And I know that's generally my cue that I'm whirling is that for some reason, again, going back to that clarity is kindness piece, is that's why that comment was actually told to me. It was a place that I had faltered where I wasn't being very clear. And somebody saying, you know, you keeping everything in and trying to do it all yourself isn't actually very kind. You're not really being supportive of your team. You know, it's not allowing people to be able to step in and help. So that's one thing that I've worked on quite a bit. That and just realizing, you know, during COVID, hearing all my friends that work at bigger companies or a lot of my friends that are in the C-level and their frustration with, we want our people here and we want to be able to watch them. There's a cultural and dynamic shift that's going on right now, and being able to kind of see the stress and that tension in it and say to them, you know, we're in a world that's changed. I don't know that it's ever going to change completely back. And I think understanding that the burden of what's going on isn't normal. It's never probably going to be that way. And to cut your people some slack, there's still people, their ability to perform, but the burden of something going on globally, you know, again, from a race standpoint to a health standpoint to an unknown standpoint, people are under a lot of stress, period. And you're home alone, you know, coping in a way that's different, just cut people a little bit more slack. And I think that reminding yourself that, to do that with yourself, for me, has kind of been my big lesson as well.
How about you, June? Do you have anything to add?
Oh, you know, I usually don't get much stress overall. Like I said, it's a little different, but I think I used to be martial art player when I was in college. So I've been practicing 7 years. So you kind of control your mindset. And then actually when you work in corporate system, like you as the employee or as an employer, it's different stress. It's totally different. It's just that, your boss say something, but actually in my as an employee time, I was a really good employee. So I didn't really get any stressful time. I work so hard. That's why pressure, stress. But I think when you do small business, you meet a lot of different people you never met before. Like kind of you work in some big company, you always meet nice corporation people, you're second manners and classy and all that. But when you really work with small business, you meet tons of different contractor or engineer, all different, personality. And you kind of, some, especially the restaurant owner is totally different sector than they're not, some of them they're not educated or it's totally different. So you actually get all that kind of like just observing their stress to me. And I used to do like yoga, meditating, but sometimes when you do yoga, they calling me and I answer, and then my whole yoga time that kind of thing in the beginning. But I feel like this is really not worth it. And then Natasha mentioned that I bring that energy to my employee, then they observing my energy. So it's really, really bad for the whole, so I start to in some point, I start to meditate, detach work in my life. So this is work. And everybody said, yeah, don't take it personally. It's so easy to say, oh, don't take it personally. Don't take it personally. Yeah. But it's not easy to really understand. But once you understand, don't take it personally. That's their life, and that's really most important in their life. It's not my majority problem, but for them might be really, really important. So you kind of have to understand them like a little bit. And I feel, pity about it. Okay, yeah, they're losing maybe 1 million, one year. So how bad it can be. Okay, I can observe a little bit, but then you kind of detach emotionally. Sometimes you just observing so many things. I have to solve it, all that, but there's not possible. So I think that I start to really detach. That's at work. That's in my life. When you go to ocean and beach, I just enjoy just the sky. I don't want to bring all my work in my, I mean, you think about marketing or how to grow business, that's different, but I think it's the work that or some negative energy for my growth. I try to detach, not really bring into my side. That's my kind of training still, though.
You're my role model, June. I aspire to be like that. It never stops. I'm like washing my hair. I'm like, did I get the proposal out? Did I do that? And it just doesn't stop. But I want to be like June and get to a place where she is, where it's, you do have to disconnect yourself. Absolutely.
Mhm.
And the energy is very big of what you allow to come in and what you exude to others. I have crystals.
It's not easy. You have to really meditate and they kind of pray God sometimes. Or actually,
I have a crystal in front of my desk. Yes, I
There
try.
you go. And then on the topic of like employee wellness, I think several employees across the board have encountered some kind of personal, needing to balance personal things that are going on. Like, how do you balance? And Reed, I'm kind of paraphrasing your question because I think it could be broadened up to the idea of running your own business and then having maybe some personal things happen. How do you balance that? How do you balance that for yourself? And then how do you balance that for or help your employees balance being part of your firm and still thriving with personal stuff going on?
I'll jump in. I think that it's just being understanding. I think that, again, the great thing about not being on your own as an individual person doing it is that you have the ability to build a culture where if somebody needs to leave because something personal is going on, whether it's with their children or, spouse or something going on personally, that there's the ability to do so. I personally had 2 weeks ago, a good friend of mine, we grew up together. His mom passed tragically and unexpectedly from a cancer that had returned. And I, in my head, kept thinking, but is that okay for you to leave to go help him? I was going to be flying out to Denver. And I thought, yes, it's okay. Yes, you're just going to have to explain this, to clients, and not too much, but just enough where you have the ability to say, sorry, there's a personal thing going on. And the fear and anxiety of leading up to it, that I thought you need to do better at that, because yes, supporting your team in them being able to do things, and it doesn't have to be tragic. I think that just even them wanting to take vacation, summer just happened, and a couple of our teammates have kids. So between summer school activities and, camps that didn't happen because there was limited capacity, everyone's kind of navigating that. So I think that letting everybody know that it's not about necessarily asking permission. And I think that's the big shift that everybody's seeing in this work from home environment, is that those are all just normal things. It shouldn't be extra to have to get to be able to consider things like your mental health or your family or caring for loved ones or responding to tragedies and deaths, because that is life. And quite frankly, it shouldn't be audacious and crazy to think about that, but it is a little bit, just because of, I think, more of the culture of architecture business and real estate has been what it has been for so long. That's the thing. I think that there's some really big paradigms that are changing. It's why we're seeing, there being some tension and people feeling uncomfortable. But like it or not, moving forward. So hopefully we can all adapt.
There's actually a good question here on the dark side of COVID is, and this is from Jacqueline, have you ever felt you were ever taken advantage of, particularly with COVID? And if so, how did you handle that? That could be employee driven, that could be client driven.
So I have 7 employees, and yes, I felt one of them did. They're no longer here. It's funny how that works out too. But when things start to come to fire, you're going to see who's going to jump in it with you and get through the other side, and who's going to stay there and leave. And our entire team jumped through that fire. And that one person that we did fill was sort of making up excuses and things like that. They didn't come. And if that's how everyone felt, everyone would have stayed on the other side. But yes, you can get taken advantage of, but when you create a good team culture and hire well, you know that's not happening. There's a lot of accountability and transparency in the work we do. I had to learn as a business owner, tell them what needs to be done and let them do it. And if it job gets done and it's not a problem, don't make it a problem. But if it's not getting done, it is a problem. You have to address it. So trust was something that I had to build within myself and in my team with COVID, to know that I was protecting them, but they were protecting my business at the same time. And eventually in time, the ones that don't work out, they end up leaving in a good way.
Yeah, and I will add to that similar situation where, again, an individual who absolutely was taking advantage. And to your point, Natasha, yes, part of the challenge is having the trust. And it is a big bummer when the trust gets broken at the expense of a client or a project. In this case, it was completely evident, and the person knew and ended up dismissing themselves. And it was, again, my hardest, part was trying not to, at one point, yes, you want to strangle them and go, damn it. But bottom line is that not every employee is going to be 100%, but also not every manager. I mean, somebody had said this to me recently too, is that a lot of people's motivation may be for leaving their company is that management and leadership, and they're super unhappy. But then, I had a client say to me, we were having kind of this peer-to-peer moment of running businesses, and he said, they said, do you treat your employees fairly, or do you think you're a good manager? And he said, you know what, Yolanda, 99% of the bosses and managers out there aren't, and you're lucky if you get one. And I thought, oh God, that's maybe true, but still, I think that just knowing that that's not the status quo that you perform to, you should absolutely want to do better. But at the same time, I think that every single person, everybody that owns a company, manages a company, is involved in leadership somehow, saw or experienced all different sides during COVID, people taking advantage, other people who maybe should have asked for more and didn't. So I don't know if that answers the question.
And then we gave our team the option of working from home full-time or not. And guess what? They want to be at this office 4 days a week. That was their choice. So I feel like if you create a good environment, they're going to want to stay there if it's safe and they enjoy it and it's happy. When it's not, they want to stay home. Why? Because that's where they're happy. So I am very fortunate and blessed that everyone wants to be here. I am beyond shocked. They're like, no, don't shut the office down. I want to be there 4 days a week. I'm like, okay, you here 4 days a week, but we keep it safe for everyone. So it's the give and the take.
That's good. That's good. There was one good question I saw in the chat. So Natasha, on your topic of entrepreneurs, somebody wanted you to elaborate on what that is.
Yes, I used to hire entrepreneurs. You want to know what happens with that? They come to your company and they leave to start their own business and something else, which is fine. But you need to find entrepreneurs who are going to help you grow your business. You cannot scale your business from a 1 million to 100 million without people. So where I'm at in my business is I ask myself, how can I get entrepreneurs to join me and want to grow? So if you have an idea for the company you're with, but you're like, I don't want to start a business. I don't want that risk on me. I don't want that stress on me, but I want to start this division within the company. Go to the business owner and say, look, I have this idea. I did my research. Here's the business plan. Here's what we can do. And I promise you, if it's a good owner, they're going to be like, you know what? Let's take that company risk together. And then you start an own division within a company. Also too, I always feel it's fair for both sides. If you're giving yourself to a company and helping it grow, they need to give back. So ask them about phantom stock. Ask them about deferred compensation. If I'm with this company for 10 years and I help your company gain 2 to 5 million, why don't we have deferred compensation where I get $100,000? Like, it has to be a give and a take. If not, no one's going to help you grow, and the company, you're going to end up leaving because they're not giving back to you. So there's all of these other little incentives for entrepreneurs to stay with companies. We like to call it the golden carrot, the golden handcuff, but if you stay, it's going to work out.
That's good.
That's an excellent point. I think that, that the piece of, and that could be a good test, I think, for people that are on the fence of, the reasons that maybe they aren't feeling challenged, maybe they do have an idea and they're thinking, is this a good, business option? I think that entrepreneurial approach is great, but approach it the way that Natasha mentioned, which is, if you're showing up and you're at a company and you have this idea and you're testing it, show up, but then also show up with what it is that you want to see come out of it for you and that reward. I'd like to do this, and I'd also like to talk about, X, Y, Z as the other component of what your benefit will be for bringing that idea or expanding that division or whatever it may be.
And do not lowball yourself as women. We do that all the time. We will negotiate for other women better. We'll go negotiate for our husbands and our brothers. But when it comes to us, we give ourselves a way lower dollar value. So I have to say, before you go back, go with a team of women or mentors you trust and say, look, here's what I'm pitching and here's what I want. Do you think that's reasonable? And they'll tell you, yes, that is, or no, that's not, because I hate it when I see women go in, they're like, yeah, let's start this business plan, but I'll take this percentage. I'm like, what did you just do? You just showed them what you think of yourself and what your worth is. No, bump that rate up, sister. You deserve that dollar amount. So if you don't feel yourself worthy, go to someone who's going to be your hype woman to be like, nope, that's the dollar amount you're going to ask for. But you got to do the work. You got to do the work to get it. Yes.
And again, one more thing on what it is that I saw a question pop up, but I think that for anybody, regardless of if you're, again, on the fence and you're considering starting a new business or being an entrepreneur, or, maybe you're considering staying at the company you're at, the biggest thing that real estate is about relationships. The way that you can grow business is based on relationships. The way that you get help when you get yourself in a pickle is based on relationships. The best way to form a bond and a relationship with somebody is find somebody that's smarter than you and have them be a mentor. And I think that mentors are the key. Again, when you have those questions and you're having somebody help you navigate, there's no way I would have been anywhere near, alive or sane without having just amazing mentors. And I think identifying those people to be your sounding board, who know you and ultimately are your champions and will help you either get out of your way or might tell you to rethink something so that, you're not as dangerous, when you make your next move. I think that's just, if there's one thing, again, whether you're building a business or not, find some mentors and spend some time with them.
I think that's good. So what is one thing you've learned about yourself in the capacity of owning your own business that you could share with the audience?
I started. I think the past 8 years. Just this is really not good. Good example to people start. But I do my insurance and not insurance. I do my invoice stuff and financial things and CPA job and everything by myself. Because it's not really professional, but then I have all the source, my friends, the CPA, my friends, the lawyers, and so it's just I'm helping for something, and then because even I want to hire someone, I want to know what it is the actual theory behind, because if you don't know about the details and how money goes and how you have a profit margin and all that, it's just hard to maintain for a long time. So I do an Excel sheet every month, and the graph charts and everything. So it's marketing and all different sector I do by myself. But I'm actually asking someone to do a little bit a handy job. But then I think mostly I do by myself. The reason that I want to learn and I want to practice. And then if it's working, I can hire someone, good one, to help me better to the next level. So it might be wrong, and again, everybody can be different. This can be wrong, but I think that I still think from my side, if you want to do business, your own business, you have to be smart on what you're doing. Some money, how you make, how your money goes, expenses, all kind of that, and also where market moves, and you read the newspapers or how money moves and or what is the opportunity out there. So you have to be busy with something else than actually designing production product, so, I mean, actual production items. So, and also is including, and you talk with the different, like the sector people, like, different industry people, and where, so everything is kind of helping for the business. It's really where we have to be hybrid, and we have to know here, there, and there. So, but I actually noticed, oh, I can pretty much I'm able to do this part and that part. So I guess everybody can do when it actually happens, because you don't have money to hire someone to do this, and you don't have a, person to create some things this for you, then you have to do it. So when you really time comes, everybody can do. So I think just a little bit make your multitaskers, make it, a little bit ready for your multitasker. You're architect, but you want to be sometimes, CPA, you want to be your like a marketing people, you want to be your like a financial manager or something like, so, or you can be, you want to be some multitasker later. I mean, that's what I kind of learned as my, from my career. I feel like, oh, maybe I thought it's only I can be a good designer, architect design, highlights and nice detail, whatever, but I maybe find out some other part of my, brain. I couldn't do this part too. So just open for that part, so you don't need to have a lot of money to start your business. You can just you learn, and you can educate something from Googles and things, and you can start from that way too. So that's, my learning person about myself.
I'm not kidding you. If any of you know me or did know me when I was 23 and I started this business as a side hustle, I was so unprofessional. I needed so much mentoring and grooming. I was bad, but I knew that I wanted to change, and I had a vision of who I could become. And today when I look in that mirror, like, I am that woman. And it makes me proud of who I am. And I don't know, I'm getting emotional, but that's why it's like starting businesses makes you address fear and who you could be. And you start to see this other person on the side. You're like, oh my gosh, I did not know I could be that woman. And, here I am at 36, loving who I am and who I see and what I'm building with people and community and teams. And I just want to say is like, be the architect of your life. You live once, build it how you want to build it. If you don't like it, demo the damn thing and rebuild again. But the only thing I used to get embarrassed about sharing my story is, of judgment. But I also know too, if I don't document, AKA make copy of these plans that are successfully building this life, how am I going to give those plans to every other woman? And they could take what worked for me and what didn't. And then imagine how many buildings we could all build off one person who shared that. It's like a light doesn't lose its candle by, light doesn't lose its light by lighting another candle. It's like we all have to share our plans with each other to make it work. Don't hoard on to things. Don't keep your story inside because you don't know who you can inspire or who you could become. So it's like, be the own architect of your life. If you don't like it, knock it down, redo it, and share your story so it could help another woman with her life and her ideas in business.
That's so brilliant, Natasha. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I love that. And Natasha, you're absolutely right. I think that if the playing small part for me was big, playing small was big. I think that I shared this on our pre-call before, is that I rarely say that I am the CEO or owner of my company. I say I work for. And part of it, was because I was worried that because of the criticisms and things that you get, you play small and you think that there's not enough room for you in the space. And I do think it's because, again, the culture of this industry sometimes is about this competition and this scarcity over abundance. And I think the one cool thing about, finding a group of people that have been, not necessarily given the opportunity, this, a women's leadership group and things of that sort, is that functioning in there is absolutely enough for everybody. I sat down and I thought about it one day, and early in my career when I was working for an architecture firm and then switched to another one, and I knew their workload and I saw that architecture firm's workload, and I thought, how are there so many projects with so many, you know, companies that are working on these projects, and the principals and their salaries, and you know, this is just a small little chunk of Orange County that we're seeing, and there's, you know, architecture companies all over the world. Where are we building? Where is all this land? Like, how is it that all these companies are functioning and sustaining? And at the end of the day, there is absolutely enough for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that as you're building and growing, there's this myth that there is competition. I think that if we look at it as the idea that we want other women to succeed because we understand how hard it is, and it is so, I mean, at times soul crushing, I think, when you're starting out owning a business and you're figuring it out and you're navigating it, you don't understand where the resources are and not everybody's willing to share. I think that that's something just to keep reminding yourself, is that playing small doesn't help anybody. And if you are playing small, again, it's not showing somebody what the possibilities are. And so, quite frankly, you know, there's a better way to do things. So, Natasha, thank you for sharing that. And
You're welcome.
hopefully there's something to inspire everybody else that's on the call.
And yes, and like you said, just so you know, you belong at the table and there's enough room at the table.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, next time someone doubts themselves, say, you belong there, sis. Get your butt on that table. You deserve to be there. Root other women on.
There was one question about resources. Is there anything in addition, Natasha, I know you're very passionate about the small business or SBA resources. Are there, in addition to that, and I'll let you kind of talk about that, and then if there's any other resources the panel feels is valuable, could you please share that with the audience?
Yeah.
That'll be our last.
Yeah. So
last question.
Really quick, if you don't know business, like I didn't know, I just had other mentors, but what I see now, I'm like, oh my gosh, if I would have joined the SBA, they have free seminars on how to set up a corporation, payroll, how to get funding. You would be mind blown because you're a woman and a minority, how much funding out there is for you and how it works and what you could do. I feel like that would have alleviated my stress way on the beginning. So yes, everyone, if you want to join a business or start a business, join the SBA. They have free classes and all of that. And I think, Christine, you spoke about Cornell. I learned something new about that, but that was a resource for me that has recently helped me go from here to here.
And real
And
quick,
also, I put that in the chat.
The I Fund Women, as well as the Needy Weeby, which is the federal classification that you can get. Women are the least likely to receive funding capital, and then once you break it down into the different ethnic and demographic cohorts, and that it just decreases from there. So I think that a lot of times that's the scary part, is the capital to begin. You can bootstrap it. I bootstrapped it. I'm sure that a lot of people on this call, just because I heard your stories, I know everyone kind of bootstrapped it and had side hustles. The side hustles I had were unbelievable. That's another story for another phone call. But at the same time, I think that the funding aspect is finding out that there is actually funding, because that absolutely could alleviate your funding of hiring people to do the things, whether it's your accounting and bookkeeping, so that you can focus on building your business. I think is incredibly important, just to know that there are so many resources out there. And thankfully, because of the changes that are happening in the world, they're emerging. And because of social media and groups like this, I think that sharing the word and getting that out there just creates more of a demand, and more people are willing to kind of get to that as well. So
Absolutely. June, was there anything else you wanted to add?
I think as Natasha mentioned, that I started like this pandemic time, I was more focused on those SBA and certified women's-owned small business and all that thing, application, all that. It's just a kind of work in the beginning. You have to prepare our documents, but it's really worth it to open up your opportunity. And then you have all the government see jobs or cities, and they actually give us some like a credit for that, that certifies and all that sector. So that makes us to involve that opportunity more. So I think you learn more, you have more opportunity. So I mean, I think it's that resource and keeping eye on, that's really helpful for the business.
And I think we're at time. Are there any other questions? Okay, well, with that said, thank you panelists for an awesome jam-packed discussion. I learned, oh my gosh, so much and so much energy. So thank you for taking the time out. Thank you all of the attendees, AIA, and hopefully we'll see you guys for the next installment on September 23rd.
Thank you. It was an honor being on this, and I hope my story pushes one of you to jump and go do the damn thing. So yes,
Right? That's the hope.
go do it.
Thank you guys. If I could have the panelists stay on for a
Okay.
few seconds.
Thank you.